The late afternoon sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago, casting golden streaks across the hardwood floors. I sat cross-legged on my cream-colored sofa, surrounded by wedding binders, fabric swatches, and seating charts that seemed to multiply by the hour. My phone buzzed for what felt like the 100th time that day. Another vendor confirming details for the wedding that was now just 3 weeks away. I'm Maya Richardson, and at 32, I thought I had finally figured out this thing called life. My marketing firm had just landed its biggest client yet, a national restaurant chain looking to rebrand. My bank account was healthy. My 2-bedroom condo had that coveted view of Lake Michigan. And in 21 days, I would marry Trevor Hamilton, the man I'd been with for 4 years. The man who'd proposed to me on a beach in Santorini with a ring that caught the sunset just right. Trevor was everything I thought I wanted. Successful corporate lawyer at one of Chicago's most prestigious firms. Tall, confident, with that easy charm that made my parents adore him from the first Sunday dinner. His family had old money, the kind that came with a last name people recognized at charity galas. When we walked into rooms together, heads turned. We looked good on paper. Hell, we looked good everywhere. But lately, something felt off. Small things at first. The way Trevor would silence his phone when I walked into the room. The overnight work trips that seemed to multiply. The distant look in his eyes when I talked about the wedding, as if his mind was somewhere else entirely. I'd pushed those thoughts down, buried them beneath lists of centerpiece options and menu tastings. Cold feet, I told myself. Everyone gets them. My best friend Jasmine had noticed it too, though she'd been too polite to say anything directly. Last week, over mimosas at our favorite brunch spot in Wicker Park, she'd squeezed my hand and asked, "Are you happy, Maya? Really happy?" I'd laughed it off, blamed wedding stress, and ordered another round. But her question had planted a seed of doubt that kept growing, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. The October wind rattled against the windows as I reached for Trevor's iPad on the coffee table. He'd left it behind that morning in his rush to the office, and I needed to check the shared calendar for our final cake tasting appointment. We'd been using the same calendar app for years, nothing secretive about it. I unlocked the screen with the passcode I'd known forever, his mother's birthday. That's when I saw it. A text notification preview at the top of the screen. Not from a contact name, but from a number I didn't recognize. The preview was enough to make my blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same hotel as last time?" My fingers trembled as I tapped the message. The thread opened, and my entire world shifted on its axis. Months of messages. Photos I couldn't unsee. Conversations dripping with an intimacy that should have been reserved for me. The other woman had a name. Vanessa. She was a paralegal at his firm. 26 years old. The messages dated back almost a year, starting just 2 months after Trevor had proposed. I sat there as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that suddenly seemed obscene in their beauty. My hands shook as I scrolled through message after message. Plans made while I'd been meeting with florists. Promises exchanged while I'd been choosing wedding invitations. He'd told her he was leaving me. He'd told her the wedding was just for appearances, for his family's expectations. He'd told her she was his real future. The apartment felt too quiet, the silence broken only by the sound of my own breathing and the distant hum of traffic below. I don't know how long I sat there before I heard the key turn in the lock. Trevor walked in, loosening his tie, that practiced smile on his face that I now realized was just another mask. "Hey, babe," he said, tossing his keys on the entry table. "Sorry I'm late. Johnson case ran long. Did you confirm the cake tasting for tomorrow?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. This man I'd planned to promise forever to, who'd been living a completely different life behind my back. My voice, when it finally came, sounded foreign to my own ears. "Who's Vanessa?" The color drained from his face. His eyes darted to the iPad in my hands, and I watched him make a split-second decision about whether to lie or come clean. "Maya, I can explain." "Don't." I stood up, surprised by how steady my legs felt when everything else was crumbling. "I read everything, Trevor. Everything." He moved toward me, hands outstretched in that placating gesture I'd seen him use in court. "It's not what you think. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. She doesn't mean anything." "A year?" My voice cracked on the words. "You've been with her for a year? You proposed to me and then started sleeping with someone else 2 months later?" "The proposal was real," he insisted, and I almost laughed at the absurdity. "I love you, Maya. I want to marry you. This thing with Vanessa, it's just physical. It's meaningless. You told her you were leaving me. You told her the wedding was just for show." I held up the iPad, evidence of his betrayal literally in my hands. "You told her she was your future." Trevor ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. Now it just looked like frustration at being caught. "I was telling her what she wanted to hear. You know how these things are." "No, Trevor. I don't know how these things are. Because I've been faithful to you. I've been planning our wedding while you've been planning your exit strategy." I moved toward the bedroom, my mind already making lists, already planning my own exit. "Get out. Maya, please. We can work through this. Couples therapy, whatever you need. I'll end it with her tonight. I'll block her number right now." He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the screen like that would somehow fix everything. I turned to look at him one last time. "You know what hurts the most? Not that you cheated. Not even that you lied. It's that you were going to let me walk down that aisle. You were going to let me make those vows while you were already breaking them. Get out." He stood there for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he realized I meant it. The exact second he understood that his charm and his excuses wouldn't work this time. He grabbed his keys, paused at the door like he might say something else, then left without another word. The door clicked shut, and I sank onto the floor, the iPad still in my hands. The sun had set completely now, leaving the apartment in darkness. My phone buzzed. Probably Jasmine calling to confirm our dinner plans for tomorrow. But I couldn't move. I couldn't think beyond the wreckage of the life I'd been building. 21 days until a wedding that would never happen. Deposits that would never be refunded. A dress hanging in my closet that no one would ever see me wear. And somewhere in this city, Trevor was probably already calling Vanessa. Probably already spinning this into another story where he was the victim. I don't know when I started crying. But once I did, I couldn't stop. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Not just for Trevor, but for the version of myself that had ignored the signs. For the future I'd been so carefully constructing that had turned out to be built on lies. For the woman I'd have to become now, starting over when I thought I'd already figured everything out. My phone lit up again. This time it wasn't Jasmine. It was Marcus, Trevor's younger brother. The message was simple. Trevor just called me. "I'm so sorry, Maya. Are you okay? Can I come over?" Marcus. I'd almost forgotten about him in all of this chaos. Trevor's brother by 2 years, the one who'd never quite fit into the Hamilton family mold. Where Trevor was corporate law and country clubs, Marcus was sustainable architecture and community projects. Where Trevor was calculated charm, Marcus was genuine warmth. He'd been in my life for 4 years, too, at family dinners and holiday gatherings, always kind, always asking about my work with real interest, not Trevor's practiced politeness. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "I'm not okay, but you can come over if you want." 30 minutes later, there was a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find Marcus standing there with a bag from my favorite Thai restaurant and a look of genuine concern that made me want to cry all over again. He was dressed casually, jeans and a Henley, his dark hair slightly windswept from the October evening. He didn't say anything, just held up the bag and gave me a small, sad smile. "I figured you hadn't eaten," he said quietly. And I know Pad CEW is your comfort food. I stepped aside to let him in, and for the first time since I'd opened that iPad, I felt like maybe I could breathe again. Marcus moved through my apartment with an easy familiarity, not invasive, just comfortable. He set out the food, made us both tea without asking, and sat down on the opposite end of the sofa, giving me space but making it clear he wasn't going anywhere. I'm sorry, he said finally. Not just for what Trevor did, but for not saying something sooner. I suspected he was seeing someone. I saw them together once, a few months ago. I should have told you, but he's my brother, and I thought maybe I was wrong, and I didn't want to blow up your life if... He stopped, shook his head. I'm sorry. That's a coward's excuse. You deserve to know. I looked at him. This man I'd spent 4 years thinking of as my future brother-in-law, and saw something I'd missed before. Integrity. Real integrity, not the performance version Trevor had mastered. You're not responsible for your brother's choices, I said. But thank you for being honest now. We ate in companionable silence, and slowly, I felt my breathing return to normal. Marcus asked about canceling vendors, offered to help make calls, suggested practical next steps without making me feel like I needed to have it all figured out tonight. He listened when I needed to talk, and sat quietly when I didn't. He didn't try to defend Trevor or minimize what had happened. He just stayed. It was close to midnight when he finally stood to leave. Call me if you need anything, he said at the door. I mean it, Maya. Anything at all. He hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, my brother is an idiot. You deserve so much better than this. After he left, I sat in the darkness of my apartment and realized something that should have terrified me, but instead felt strangely liberating. I had no idea what came next. The life I'd been living was over. The future I'd been planning was gone. And for the first time in years, I had absolutely no plan. Just wreckage and possibility, and 21 days until a wedding that would never be. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. First call, Jasmine. She answered on the second ring, and I said the words that made it all real. I called off the wedding. I need you. She was at my door in 20 minutes, armed with wine and fury at Trevor, and the kind of fierce love that only best friends can provide. We stayed up until dawn, canceling vendors, crafting the message we'd send to guests, planning my new life one step at a time. As the sun rose over Lake Michigan, painting my apartment in shades of hope I wasn't quite ready to feel yet, I made myself a promise. I would never again ignore my instincts. I would never again settle for someone who made me feel like I had to perform. I would never again mistake charm for character. I didn't know it then, but that promise would change everything. That promise would lead me down an aisle after all, just not the one I'd been expecting. But that part of the story was still 3 weeks and 1,000 decisions away. For now, I had a wedding to cancel, a heart to piece back together, and a new version of myself to discover. The Maya Richardson who'd been planning to become Maya Hamilton was gone. Someone new was emerging from the wreckage, and I had no idea who she would be. But for the first time in months, maybe years, that felt like exactly the right place to start. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of phone calls, canceled reservations, and awkward conversations. I'd never realized how many pieces went into planning a wedding until I had to systematically dismantle each one. The venue coordinator had been surprisingly understanding, probably because this wasn't her first canceled wedding. The florist less so, given the non-refundable deposit. The caterer suggested I still throw a party. A celebration of your new freedom, she'd said with dark humor I appreciated. My office became my sanctuary. At least there, I could focus on client presentations and marketing strategies instead of explaining to another distant relative why the wedding was off. I'd sent a carefully worded email to the guest list, keeping it simple. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Maya Richardson and Trevor Hamilton have decided to cancel their upcoming wedding. We apologize for any inconvenience and appreciate your understanding during this private time." Trevor had texted dozens of times in the first few days, long paragraphs explaining, justifying, pleading. I'd blocked his number on day 3. His mother had called too, her voice dripping with the kind of polite disappointment that came from generations of keeping up appearances. "These things happen, Maya. People make mistakes. Trevor's father had a little indiscretion before our wedding too. It's what men do. You learn to forgive." I'd hung up without responding, and added her number to the block list too. The hardest call had been to my own parents. My dad had driven up from Springfield the same day, arriving at my door with the same fierce protectiveness he'd shown when boys broke my heart in high school. My mom had cried, not for the lost wedding, but for her daughter having to go through this. They'd stayed for 3 days, and my dad had physically removed the last of Trevor's belongings from my apartment, loading them into boxes with a grim satisfaction that made me love him even more. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Marcus texted again. We'd been in touch sporadically since that first night. Brief check-ins, offers to help with vendor cancellations, a few messages that were simply kind words when I needed them most. This message was different. "I know this might be weird timing, but I have something I want to show you. Are you free Saturday?" I stared at the text for a long moment. Accepting felt like crossing some invisible line, turning my former almost brother-in-law into something else entirely. But refusing felt like letting Trevor's betrayal control even more of my life, like I couldn't have a simple friendship because of what his brother had done. "I'm free," I typed back. "What did you have in mind?" "It's a surprise. Dress comfortably and bring a jacket." "I'll pick you up at 10? Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of October day that makes Chicago feel like the most beautiful city in the world. I dressed in jeans and a sweater, pulled my natural curls into a high ponytail, and tried not to overthink what I was doing. This was just Marcus being kind, a friend offering distraction, nothing more complicated than that. He arrived exactly at 10, driving a hybrid SUV that suited him perfectly. Practical but thoughtful about its environmental impact. He wore jeans and a leather jacket, and when he smiled at me, I felt something shift in my chest that I immediately pushed away. Too soon. Too complicated. Too everything. "So where are we going?" I asked as I buckled in. "You'll see," he said, pulling into traffic. "But I promise you'll like it. Or at least, I hope you will." We drove north, out of the city, talking easily about everything except Trevor and the wedding. Marcus told me about his current project, a mixed-use development in Bronzeville focused on affordable housing and green spaces. His passion for the work was evident in every word, his hands gesturing animatedly as he described sustainable building materials and community input sessions. I talked about my firm, about the restaurant rebranding that was consuming my days, about the strange liberation of pouring myself into work without wedding planning hanging over every free moment. An hour later, we pulled up to a nature preserve I'd never heard of, a sprawling expanse of trails and woodlands about 40 miles north of the city. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a handful of cars belonging to serious hikers and birdwatchers. "I come here when I need to think," Marcus said as we got out. "When the city gets too loud and I need to remember there's a world beyond deadlines and expectations." He grabbed a backpack from the trunk. "I thought maybe you could use that too." We started on a trail that wound through dense forest, the canopy overhead a riot of orange and gold and deep burgundy. The air smelled like earth and fallen leaves, and the only sounds were our footsteps and the occasional bird call. Marcus didn't push conversation, content to walk in comfortable silence, and I found myself breathing easier than I had in weeks. "Trevor hated places like this," I said suddenly, the words escaping before I could stop them. He considered nature something to be looked at from a distance, preferably through the window of a nice restaurant. The one time I convinced him to go hiking in Starved Rock, he complained the entire time about his shoes getting dirty. Marcus glanced at me, then away. Trevor and I have never really understood each other. Our parents certainly never knew what to make of me, the son who chose sustainable architecture over corporate law, who drives a hybrid instead of a BMW, who actually cares about things beyond the family name and the next big deal. That must have been hard, I said, growing up in that shadow. Sometimes, he admitted, but it also meant I got to figure out who I was without the same pressure Trevor had. He spent his whole life living up to expectations, becoming exactly who our parents wanted him to be. I'm not excusing what he did, he added quickly. What he did to you was inexcusable. But I think sometimes he doesn't even know who he really is underneath all those expectations. We walked for another 20 minutes before the trail opened onto a clearing with a stunning view of a valley below, trees stretching as far as I could see in every direction. Marcus pulled a thermos and 2 cups from his backpack, pouring hot apple cider that steamed in the cool air. "This is my thinking spot," he said, settling onto a flat rock and patting the space beside him. "I come here when I need perspective, when a project isn't working, or when I'm trying to make a big decision. Something about being surrounded by all this," he gestured at the landscape, "reminds me that our problems are just one small part of a much bigger picture." I sat beside him, sipping the cider, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. "Thank you for bringing me here. I didn't realize how much I needed this until right now." "You've been through hell," Marcus said quietly, "and you've handled it with more grace than anyone could expect. But you can let yourself fall apart too, Maya. You don't have to be strong all the time." Something about those words, about the genuine understanding in his voice, broke through the careful composure I'd been maintaining. Tears started falling before I could stop them, and suddenly I was crying for real. Not the angry tears of that first night, but the deep, grieving sobs of someone mourning a lost future. Marcus didn't try to stop me or tell me it would be okay. He just put his arm around my shoulders and let me cry, solid and present in a way Trevor had never been. When the tears finally slowed, he handed me a napkin from his backpack without comment. "I feel like such an idiot," I said, wiping my eyes. I ignored so many signs. The late nights, the distance, the way he'd check his phone constantly. I just kept telling myself it was work stress or wedding jitters. I didn't want to see what was right in front of me. "That doesn't make you an idiot," Marcus said firmly. "That makes you someone who trusted the person you loved. There's nothing wrong with that. The betrayal is on him, not you. Your family probably thinks I'm overreacting. His mother certainly does. She basically told me every man cheats and I should just get over it." Marcus's jaw tightened. "My mother has spent 40 years overlooking my father's affairs in the name of maintaining appearances. That's her choice, and I respect it even if I don't understand it. But that doesn't mean it's the only choice. You deserve someone who's faithful, Maya. Someone who respects you enough to be honest, even when the truth is hard." We sat there until the cider was gone, and the sun had shifted position in the sky, talking about everything and nothing. Marcus told me about his college girlfriend, who'd left him because he wouldn't take a job at his father's firm. I told him about my first serious relationship, the guy who'd dumped me right before my college graduation because he'd gotten a job offer across the country, and long distance seemed too complicated. We talked about our families, our dreams, the versions of ourselves we'd thought we'd be by now, versus who we actually were. It was the most honest conversation I'd had in years, maybe ever. With Trevor, there had always been a performance aspect, both of us playing roles in the life we were building. With Marcus, I could just be. No expectations, no pretense, just 2 people talking while the world turned around us. As we hiked back to the car, I realized something that should have alarmed me, but instead felt right. I was falling for my ex-fiancé's brother. Not in spite of the complication, but because of who he was. Kind, genuine, present in ways Trevor had never been. It was too soon, too messy, too potentially destructive. But as we drove back toward the city, trading stories and laughing at Marcus's terrible jokes, I couldn't bring myself to care about the complications. We stopped for dinner at a small Italian place in a north suburb, the kind of family-owned restaurant with red checkered tablecloths and photos of the Amalfi Coast on the walls. The owner knew Marcus by name, greeting him with a warm hug and curiosity about his companion. "This is Maya," Marcus said simply. "A very good friend." The words sent a small thrill through me that I tried to ignore. But over pasta and wine, our conversation deepened in ways that felt deliberate. Marcus told me about the years he'd spent wondering if he'd ever find someone who understood him, who saw beyond the Hamilton name to who he really was. I told him about the loneliness of my relationship with Trevor, how I'd felt more alone with him than when I was actually by myself. "I watched you with Trevor all these years," Marcus said quietly, twirling his pasta. "At family dinners and holidays. You were always so gracious, so warm with everyone. But I could see how he'd talk over you sometimes, or change the subject when you were excited about something. Little dismissals that added up over time. You saw that?" I was surprised, touched that someone had noticed. "I saw it," he confirmed, "and I hated it. You deserved someone who lit up when you walked in a room, not someone who saw you as an accessory to his perfect life." He met my eyes across the table. "You still deserve that, Maya." The restaurant suddenly felt too warm, too intimate. The candle on our table flickered between us, casting shadows that made Marcus's features softer, more vulnerable. I realized we'd been leaning toward each other across the table, drawn together like magnets. "Marcus," I said carefully, "what are we doing here?" He sat back, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that reminded me painfully of Trevor. But then he smiled, and the similarity disappeared. This was Marcus, his own person, not a shadow of his brother. "Honestly, I don't know," he said. "All I know is that I've thought about you more in the last 2 weeks than I probably should. That I want to know you're okay. That I want to make you smile. That I look for reasons to text you even when I know I shouldn't." He paused. "But I also know the timing is terrible, and the situation is complicated, and you need time to heal. So I'm not asking for anything, Maya. I'm just being honest about what I'm feeling." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Every rational part of my brain was screaming that this was too soon, too messy, that I was rebounding and confusing kindness for attraction. But sitting there, looking at Marcus, looking at me with such open honesty, I couldn't deny what I was feeling too. "I need time," I said finally. "I need to figure out who I am without Trevor, without wedding planning, without any of it. But Marcus," I reached across the table, taking his hand, "I'm feeling things too, things I probably shouldn't feel yet. And I don't know what that means or where it goes. But I wanted you to know." His hand closed around mine, warm and solid. "Then we take it slow. We take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere, Maya." We finished dinner in a comfortable silence filled with possibility. On the drive back to the city, Marcus's hand found mine across the console, and I let it stay there, both of us acknowledging without words that something had shifted between us. Something inevitable and terrifying, and wonderful all at once. He walked me to my door, and we stood in the hallway outside my apartment, neither quite ready for the evening to end. "Thank you for today," I said. "For the hike and the conversation and just everything. Thank you for saying yes," he replied. "For giving me a chance to know you better. The real you, not just Trevor's fiancé." He hugged me goodbye, and for a moment, I let myself sink into the embrace, breathing in his scent, cedar and coffee and something uniquely him. When we pulled apart, his hand lingered on my arm for just a second longer than necessary. "Good night, Maya," he said softly. "Good night, Marcus." I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart racing. What was I doing? Trevor had broken my heart 3 weeks ago. I should be grieving, healing, focusing on myself, not developing feelings for his brother. The complications alone were enough to make any reasonable person run in the opposite direction. But as I got ready for bed, I caught myself smiling at my reflection in the mirror. For the first time since discovering Trevor's betrayal, I felt something other than pain and anger. I felt hope, possibility, the stirring of something new emerging from the ashes of what I'd lost. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Thank you for today. Sleep well." I typed back, "You too. And Marcus, I'm glad you're in my life." His response came immediately. "So am I. More than you know." I fell asleep with my phone in my hand, a smile on my face, and the first real peace I'd felt in weeks. Tomorrow would bring more complications, more questions about what I was doing and where this was going. But tonight, I let myself just feel. Just be. Just imagine for a moment a different future than the one I'd been planning. A future that was messy and complicated and absolutely nothing like what I'd expected. But maybe, just maybe, exactly what I needed. The restaurant rebranding project consumed my next week, which I was grateful for. Long days in the office meant less time to overthink what was happening with Marcus, less time to question whether I was making terrible decisions, or simply following my heart for the first time in years. We texted daily. Good morning messages, funny anecdotes from our workdays, links to articles we thought the other would enjoy. Nothing overtly romantic, but everything tinged with the awareness that we were building something neither of us could quite define yet. It was Thursday evening when Jasmine showed up at my office unannounced, her face set in a grim expression I'd learned to recognize over 15 years of friendship. She closed the door behind her and set her laptop on my desk with the kind of deliberate care that suggested she had something important to show me. "I need you to see something before you hear it from someone else," she said, opening the laptop to a social media profile I didn't recognize at first. Vanessa Chen, Trevor's affair partner. Her profile was semi-public, filled with carefully curated photos of a life I recognized too well. Upscale restaurants, weekend getaways, the kind of filtered perfection that social media demanded. But it was the most recent post that made my breath catch. A photo of Trevor and Vanessa together at what appeared to be a rooftop bar, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Finally free to live our truth. When you know, you know." The post was from yesterday. 3 weeks after I'd ended our engagement, Trevor had already gone public with the woman he'd been cheating with. My first instinct was to feel humiliated, exposed. But as I stared at the photo, studying Trevor's smile, the same practiced expression he'd worn in our own relationship photos, I felt something unexpected. Relief. "Are you okay?" Jasmine asked gently, searching my face for signs of breakdown. I surprised both of us by laughing, not the manic laugh of someone losing it, but genuine amusement at the absurdity of it all. "He thinks he's finally free? He went from me to her without ever stopping to figure out who he actually is or what he actually wants. He's just running the same program with a different actress in the role." Jasmine sat back, studying me with the analytical eye that made her such a successful criminal defense attorney. Okay, I did not expect that reaction. I expected tears, rage, maybe some creative cursing, but not philosophical insight. "I think I'm finally processing everything," I said, closing the laptop. Trevor wasn't the love of my life. He was the life I thought I was supposed to want. The successful lawyer, the good family name, the picture-perfect relationship that looked great on Instagram. But it was all performance, Jas. All of it. And now? She leaned forward, her expression knowing in a way that made me nervous. And now I'm figuring out what I actually want instead of what I'm supposed to want. Does what you actually want happen to involve a certain sustainable architect who's been checking in on you with suspicious frequency? I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Marcus has been a good friend during a difficult time. Maya Richardson, I have known you since sophomore year of college. I know when you're lying to me and when you're lying to yourself. What's happening with Marcus? I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Honestly, I don't know. He's kind and present and genuine in ways Trevor never was. We went hiking last weekend, and I've never felt more seen by someone. We talk about real things, dreams and fears, and who we actually are instead of who we're pretending to be. But Jazz, he's Trevor's brother. The complications alone are only complicated if you let other people's opinions matter more than your own happiness, Jasmine interrupted. I've watched you spend 4 years dimming your light to fit into Trevor's world. Don't let what people might think stop you from actually living. It's too soon, I protested. I should be focused on healing, on figuring myself out. Getting involved with someone else, especially someone so connected to Trevor. Maya, you're not getting involved with someone else. You're developing feelings for someone who sees you, respects you, and treats you the way you should have always been treated. There's no rule book that says you have to be single for 6 months before you're allowed to explore those feelings. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't find the words. Because Jasmine was right. I'd been so caught up in doing things the right way, the proper healing timeline, the appropriate period of singledom, that I hadn't stopped to ask myself what I actually wanted. I'm scared, I admitted. What if I'm just rebounding? What if I'm confusing kindness for attraction? What if I'm making another massive mistake? Jasmine reached across the desk and took my hand. Those are all valid fears, but they're also the fears that keep us playing small, that keep us from taking chances on things that might actually make us happy. You know what I see when you talk about Marcus? I see you light up in a way you never did with Trevor. I see you being yourself instead of performing the role of Trevor Hamilton's perfect fiancé. My phone buzzed on my desk. A text from Marcus. Random question. What's your favorite pizza topping? Asking for a very important project. I couldn't help smiling. Mushrooms and black olives. Why? Because I'm planning to surprise you with dinner tomorrow night if you're free. And I've learned never to mess up someone's pizza order. Jasmine watched me type my response, her expression smug. Just friends, huh? We're taking things slow, I said defensively. You're smiling at your phone like a teenager. That's not slow, honey. That's falling. The next evening, I found myself standing outside Marcus's apartment in Lincoln Park, holding a bottle of wine and trying to calm my nervous heartbeat. This wasn't a date, I told myself. This was dinner between friends. The fact that I'd changed outfits 3 times and spent 20 minutes on my hair was just normal self-care. Nothing to do with the way my stomach fluttered when I thought about seeing him. Marcus opened the door, and my breath caught. He was wearing a dark green Henley that brought out the warmth in his brown eyes, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. His apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Clean lines and warm woods, plants on every available surface, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with architecture texts and literary fiction. Art on the walls that looked like it came from local galleries, not decorator showrooms. Welcome to my place, he said, stepping aside to let me in. Fair warning, my pizza-making skills are enthusiastic, but not professional. The kitchen island was covered in ingredients, fresh mozzarella, basil, various toppings carefully arranged. A stand mixer held dough that looked surprisingly legitimate. You made the dough from scratch? I asked, impressed. It's been proofing all day, he admitted, looking pleased with himself. I figured if we're doing this, we're doing it right. Besides, cooking helps me think, and I've had a lot to think about lately. We worked side by side, stretching dough and debating the merits of various topping combinations. Marcus told me about his week, about a community meeting that had gone surprisingly well, about a design challenge he was trying to solve for the Bronzeville project. I told him about the restaurant rebranding, about finally landing on a concept that felt authentic instead of trendy. It felt easy, natural, like we'd been doing this for years instead of navigating something completely new and potentially catastrophic. As we slid our pizzas into the oven, Marcus poured us both wine and gestured toward the living room. We settled onto his couch, which faced a window overlooking the street below, the city lights twinkling in the darkness. I saw Vanessa's post, I said, deciding to address it head-on. Trevor went public with her. Marcus's jaw tightened. I saw it too. He called me this morning, wanted to give me a heads up before I saw it online. Like that somehow made it better. What did you say? I told him he was a coward for not giving you more time before parading his affair in public. I told him he had no idea what he'd lost. And I told him that if he contacted you again, he'd have to go through me first. He looked at me, something fierce and protective in his expression. I hope that was okay. I probably overstepped. It was more than okay, I interrupted. Thank you for defending me. Trevor's family certainly isn't. My family has never been good at the things that actually matter, Marcus said quietly. They're excellent at appearances and networking and maintaining the family name. But emotional honesty? Actually caring about people instead of what those people can do for you? Not so much. Is that why you went into sustainable architecture instead of law? Partly, but mostly because I wanted to build things that actually mattered. I wanted to create spaces where communities could thrive, where people who'd been pushed out of their own neighborhoods could afford to stay. My father called it wasting my education. My mother said I was throwing away opportunities. Trevor just looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Their loss, I said firmly. What you do matters, Marcus. It matters more than any corporate law case or family legacy. He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. My family has never understood that. You're the first person who... He stopped, shook his head. Sorry. I don't want to put pressure on this, on whatever this is between us. What is this between us? I asked softly. Because I'm feeling things I probably shouldn't feel yet, and I need to know if I'm alone in that. Marcus set down his wine glass and turned to face me fully. You're not alone. Maya, I've been fighting my feelings for you for longer than you know. Longer than I should admit, given that you were engaged to my brother. My heart stopped. What do you mean? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of nervousness I was beginning to recognize. Remember that Christmas dinner 2 years ago? You wore this deep red dress, and you were telling everyone about landing your first major client. Your whole face was lit up, and Trevor was on his phone, barely paying attention. And I remember thinking, this woman deserves someone who actually sees her. Someone who celebrates her wins instead of treating them like background noise. I remembered that night. Remembered feeling so excited about my company's growth, only to have Trevor dismiss it as cute that I was playing entrepreneur. I'd brushed it off then, told myself he was stressed about work. But Marcus had noticed. Marcus had seen. I told myself it was just protective instinct, Marcus continued. That I just wanted my future sister-in-law to be happy. But then there was that 4th of July party at my parents' house. You were standing on the deck, watching the fireworks, and the light kept catching in your hair. Trevor was inside networking with some judge. And I stood there thinking about how if you were mine, I'd never leave you standing alone. I'd never miss a single moment with you. His words hung in the air between us, raw and honest in a way that made my chest ache. I hated myself for it, he said quietly. You were with my brother. You were happy, or at least you seemed happy. I had no right to feel what I was feeling, so I pushed it down, kept my distance when I could, told myself it would pass. And then I called off the wedding, I said, understanding dawning. And then you called off the wedding. And suddenly there was this possibility that had never existed before. But you were hurting, and the timing was terrible, and I knew I needed to be careful. I knew I couldn't rush this or push you. But Maya... He reached out, tucking a curl behind my ear, his hand lingering against my cheek. I've been falling for you for 2 years. And now that I can actually tell you that, now that there's even a chance you might feel the same way, I don't know how to take it slow. I don't know how to pretend I don't feel what I feel. I leaned into his touch, my eyes closing for a moment. I'm terrified, I admitted. Terrified that I'm making another mistake. Terrified that I'm rebounding or confusing gratitude for affection. Terrified of what your family will say, what people will think. terrified that this is too good to be real and I'm going to wake up disappointed again. Those are all valid fears, Marcus said, echoing Jasmine's words from yesterday. And I can't promise you won't get hurt again. I can't promise this will work out the way we hope. But I can promise you this. I see you, Maya. All of you. Not the version you think you should be, but who you actually are. And that person is extraordinary. The oven timer went off, breaking the moment. We both laughed, the tension easing as we moved to rescue our pizzas. But something had shifted. We'd said the things that needed to be said, admitted what we'd both been feeling. The air felt different now, charged with possibility and truth. We ate our pizzas, which were actually pretty good, and talked late into the night. Marcus told me about the years he'd spent feeling like he didn't fit in his own family, about finding his purpose in architecture, about the relationships that had failed because he'd never felt truly seen. I told him about my own journey, about building my company from nothing, about the ways I'd compromised myself trying to fit into Trevor's world. I lost parts of myself with Trevor, I said, as we sat side by side on his couch, my feet tucked under me, his arm resting along the back cushions behind my shoulders. I stopped playing music because Trevor thought it was too much at dinner parties. I stopped expressing strong opinions about politics because it made his family uncomfortable. I even changed the way I dressed, wore my hair straighter, softened my edges. And I didn't even realize I was doing it until after everything fell apart. Then we spend time helping you find those parts again, Marcus said simply. What did you play? Music, I mean. Piano. And I sang, a little. Jazz standards mostly. My dad got me lessons when I was 8, and I fell in love with it. I used to play at small clubs in college. Nothing serious, just for fun. There's a piano in my parents' house that no one ever touches, Marcus said. We should go play it. Storm in there and make beautiful noise just because we can. I laughed at the image. Your mother would have a heart attack. My mother needs to have a few heart attacks if it means living authentically instead of performing constantly. He paused. Though if you're not ready to face my family, I understand. I know it's complicated. Everything about this is complicated, I agreed. But Marcus, I don't want to hide. I don't want to sneak around or pretend we're not developing feelings because of what other people might think. I spent 4 years performing for Trevor's family. I'm done performing. He turned to look at me, his face so close I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. So what do you want instead? I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. This was the moment, the choice that would change everything. I could retreat, tell him I needed more time, keep myself safe behind walls of caution and appropriate timelines. Or I could be brave. I could choose what I wanted instead of what I should want. I want this, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I want you. I want to see where this goes without overthinking every step. I want to be with someone who actually sees me, who celebrates me instead of tolerating me. And I know it's fast and I know it's messy, but Marcus, I haven't felt this alive in years. Maybe ever. His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. Are you sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. My family will have opinions. People will judge. Trevor will lose his mind. It's going to get complicated. It's already complicated, I pointed out. And I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions for me. Marcus smiled then, a real smile that transformed his whole face. Then we do this right. No hiding, no apologies. We take our time getting to know each other, but we do it honestly. And when we're ready, we tell my family and deal with whatever comes. When we're ready, I agreed. But Marcus, I think I want to kiss you first. He laughed, a sound of pure joy. I was hoping you'd say that. When his lips met mine, it felt like coming home. Not the desperate, needy kiss of rebound, but something deeper. something that acknowledged all the pain of the past few weeks while reaching toward possibility. His hand slid into my hair, and I wrapped my arms around his neck, both of us taking our time, learning each other, building something new on the foundation of honesty we'd established. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard, our foreheads resting together. "Wow," Marcus said. "Yeah," I agreed. "Wow." We stayed on his couch for hours more, talking and kissing and planning absolutely nothing. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, I wasn't thinking about timelines or expectations or what came next. I was just present, just alive, just falling for someone who actually deserved it. It was close to midnight when I finally headed home, Marcus insisting on walking me to my car despite the cold. He kissed me goodbye under a streetlight, and I drove home with a smile on my face that refused to fade. My apartment felt different when I walked in. Still mine, still safe, but no longer a refuge from something. Instead, it felt like a launching pad, a place where I could figure out who Maya Richardson actually was when she wasn't performing for anyone else. I was getting ready for bed when my phone rang. Marcus's name on the screen made my heart skip. "Missing me already?" I answered, unable to keep the smile from my voice. "Always," he said. "But I called because I need to tell you something. I should have told you earlier, but the moment never felt right, and now I'm worried I've waited too long." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "Trevor knows. About my feelings for you, I mean. He called me tonight after you left. Apparently someone saw us having dinner last week and told him. He's angry, Maya. Really angry. He said some things about me, about you, about what we're doing that I don't want to repeat." I sat down heavily on my bed. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth. That I care about you. That we're exploring something together. And that he gave up any right to have an opinion when he cheated on you for a year. But Maya, he's threatening to tell our parents, to make this as difficult as possible. I need you to know what you're walking into before we go any further." I thought about Trevor's threats, about the Hamilton family's power to make things uncomfortable, about the gossip and the judgment and all the complications that would come from this relationship. And then I thought about Marcus's smile, about the way he listened when I talked, about feeling seen and valued for the first time in years. "Let him tell whoever he wants," I said firmly. "I'm not hiding anymore. We're not doing anything wrong, Marcus. We're two adults exploring feelings that developed naturally. If your family can't handle that, if Trevor can't handle it, that's their problem, not ours. You're amazing, you know that?" Marcus's voice was warm with affection. "I'm just tired of living my life according to other people's rules," I said. "I'm 32 years old. I've built a successful business. I've survived my fiancé's betrayal. I think I can handle whatever the Hamiltons want to throw at me." "And we're really doing this? Together?" "Together," I confirmed. "Whatever comes." After we hung up, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for panic to set in. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt certain, clear, like I'd finally stopped fighting the current and started swimming with it instead. The next 3 days passed in a blur. True to his word, Trevor had told his parents about Marcus and me. Mrs. Hamilton called, her voice dripping with disappointment, talking about inappropriate timing and disrespecting the family. I listened politely, and then told her, kindly but firmly, that her son's infidelity was what had disrespected our relationship, and I would be making my own choices about who to spend time with going forward. She'd hung up on me. I considered it a victory. My parents, by contrast, were cautiously supportive. My dad wanted to make sure I was actually over Trevor and not just rebounding. My mom wanted to know if Marcus made me happy. When I assured them both that yes, I was genuinely over Trevor, and yes, Marcus made me happy in ways I hadn't known I could be, they gave me their blessing. "Life's too short to worry about what other people think," my dad said. "If this Marcus treats you right, If he makes you smile like you're smiling now, then that's all that matters. Jasmine, of course, was thrilled. I knew it, she'd crowed when I told her everything. I knew you two had chemistry. This is going to be so good for you, Maya. Real, honest love instead of that performed perfection you had with Trevor. The hardest conversation was with my business partner, Simone. Not because she judged, Simone had never liked Trevor, but because she was practical. Are you ready for the fallout? She asked during a coffee meeting. The Hamiltons have connections in this city. If they want to make things difficult for your business. They won't, I said with more confidence than I felt. Marcus won't let them, and despite everything, they care more about appearances than revenge. Making a public scene would hurt them as much as it would hurt me. I hope you're right, Simone said. But Maya, I'm proud of you. You're choosing yourself instead of the safe option. That takes guts. It was Friday afternoon when Marcus texted, "Dinner at my parents' house tomorrow night. They want to discuss the situation. Are you up for it?" I stared at the message for a long moment. This was it. The moment where we either stood together or let the pressure break us apart. I thought about retreating, about suggesting we wait until things cooled down. But I was done waiting. Done letting other people dictate my timeline. I'm up for it, I typed back. But we're going together, and we're not apologizing for anything. Agreed. I'll pick you up at 6. And Maya, thank you for being brave enough to do this. Thank you for being worth it, I replied. That night, I stood in front of my closet for a long time, choosing my outfit carefully. Not trying to impress the Hamiltons or win them over, but presenting myself authentically. I chose a deep purple dress that I loved, wore my hair in its natural curls, put on the jewelry my grandmother had left me. When I looked in the mirror, I saw Maya Richardson. Not Trevor's ex-fiancée, not Marcus's new girlfriend. Just me. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. The battle lines were drawn. Tomorrow night would determine whether the Hamiltons could intimidate us into hiding, or whether Marcus and I were strong enough to stand together against the storm. As I climbed into bed, my phone buzzed one last time. Marcus, no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know. Choosing you is the easiest decision I've ever made. I fell asleep smiling, ready for whatever came next. Because I'd finally learned the difference between fighting for a relationship and fighting for yourself. And this time, I was doing both. The Hamilton estate sat in Kenilworth, a North Shore suburb that screamed old money with its sprawling properties and manicured lawns. I'd been here dozens of times over the past 4 years, always arriving with Trevor, always playing the role of the gracious future daughter-in-law. Tonight felt completely different. Tonight, I was walking in as myself, with Marcus beside me, ready to face whatever judgment came our way. Marcus pulled up the long driveway and put the car in park. Before I could reach for the door handle, he took my hand. "Last chance to back out," he said, though his smile told me he knew I wouldn't. "We could go get deep dish pizza and watch terrible movies instead." Tempting, I admitted. But we need to do this. We need to make it clear that we're not hiding and we're not apologizing. He lifted my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles. "Have I mentioned that you're remarkable?" "Once or twice, but I never get tired of hearing it." We walked to the door hand in hand. "Mrs. Hamilton answered, her expression carefully neutral, her eyes taking in our joined hands with a slight tightening around her mouth. She was dressed impeccably as always, silk blouse, tailored pants, pearls that probably cost more than my car. "Marcus, Maya." Her voice was cool. "Please come in. Your father is in the study with Trevor." Of course Trevor was here. I should have expected that. I felt Marcus tense beside me, but we walked into the house together, our hands still linked. The Hamilton study was all dark wood and leather, designed to intimidate. Mr. Hamilton sat behind his massive desk like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. Trevor stood by the fireplace, his posture rigid, his face a mask of controlled anger. When he saw us, saw our joined hands. Something ugly flashed across his features. "Thank you for coming," Mr. Hamilton said, gesturing to the chairs in front of his desk. "Please, sit." "We'll stand, thanks," Marcus said evenly. "This isn't a trial, Dad." "Isn't it?" Trevor interjected, his voice sharp. "You're sleeping with my ex-fiancé 3 weeks after we broke up. You're supposed to be my brother." "I was your brother when you were cheating on Maya for a year," Marcus shot back. "Where was your family loyalty then?" "Boys," Mrs. Hamilton cut in, her tone suggesting this behavior was beneath them. "Let's all remain civil. We're here to discuss a very delicate situation." "There's nothing delicate about it," I said, finding my voice. "Trevor cheated. I ended our engagement. Marcus and I developed feelings for each other. None of that requires a family tribunal." Mr. Hamilton leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Maya, we understand you're hurt. What Trevor did was regrettable." "Regrettable." I couldn't help the sharp laugh that escaped. "He had a year-long affair and was planning to leave me after the wedding. That's not regrettable. That's cruel." "Nevertheless," Mr. Hamilton continued as if I hadn't spoken, "moving forward with Marcus so quickly looks impulsive. People will talk. They'll say you're rebounding, that you're trying to get revenge on Trevor. The optics are poor." "The optics?" Marcus's voice was dangerously quiet. "This is exactly the problem with this family. Everything is about optics and appearances and what people will say. Nobody asks what's actually right or what makes anyone actually happy." "That's easy for you to say," Trevor snapped. "You've never cared about this family's reputation. You've spent your whole life rebelling against everything we stand for." "I've spent my whole life trying to be authentic," Marcus corrected. "Something you might want to try instead of building your entire identity around Dad's expectations." "Enough," Mrs. Hamilton said sharply. "This is getting us nowhere." She turned to me, her expression softening slightly into something that might have been sympathy. "Maya, dear, I know you and Trevor had difficulties, but surely you can see how this looks. Dating his brother mere weeks after your breakup? It's unseemly." "With all due respect, Mrs. Hamilton," I said, keeping my voice level. "I spent 4 years worrying about how things looked to your family. I changed myself, made myself smaller, quieter, more acceptable. And your son still betrayed me. So forgive me if I'm done caring about Seemly." The room fell silent. Even Trevor seemed momentarily stunned by my directness. "Marcus makes me happy," I continued. "He sees me, values me, treats me with respect. We're not rushing into anything. We're taking our time, getting to know each other, building something real. If that bothers you, if the timing bothers you, I understand, but we're not stopping because of your disapproval." "Maya," Trevor started, moving toward us. "Don't," Marcus cut him off, stepping slightly in front of me. "You don't get to have an opinion here, Trevor. You gave up that right when you chose Vanessa." "This isn't about Vanessa," Trevor said, and for the first time, his carefully constructed mask cracked. I saw real pain underneath. "This is about my brother betraying me, about you moving in on my fiancé." "Ex-fiancé," I corrected, and Marcus didn't move in on anything. "We became friends during a difficult time, and feelings developed naturally. Feelings that might have been there longer than either of us wanted to admit." Trevor's eyes widened. "How long?" he demanded, looking between us. "How long have you two been—" He couldn't even finish the sentence. "I've had feelings for Maya for about 2 years," Marcus said calmly. "Feelings I never acted on, never even acknowledged fully, because she was with you. Feelings I hated myself for having. But I never betrayed you, Trevor. I never acted on those feelings until you'd already destroyed your relationship through your own choices." 2 years, Trevor repeated, his voice hollow. "You've wanted her for 2 years, and you just waited? That's what decent people do." Marcus said. "They don't act on every attraction. They respect boundaries and commitments. Maybe you should try it sometime." Mr. Hamilton stood abruptly, his patience apparently exhausted. "This is unacceptable. Marcus, you're putting us all in a terrible position. The wedding was supposed to be 3 weeks from now. Do you have any idea what people are already saying? And now you want to parade around with your brother's ex-fiancée?" "Her name is Maya," Marcus said firmly. "And yes, I want to be with her. Publicly, proudly, without apology. If that embarrasses you, I'm sorry, but not sorry enough to give her up." "Then you're choosing her over your family?" Mrs. Hamilton asked, her voice tight. "I'm choosing honesty over performance," Marcus replied. "Something this family could benefit from. You want to talk about embarrassment? Let's talk about Dad's affairs that everyone pretends not to know about. Let's talk about the fact that you've built your entire marriage on looking the other way. Let's talk about how you raised Trevor to value success and appearances over integrity." "How dare you?" Mr. Hamilton's voice was ice. "How dare I tell the truth?" Marcus challenged. "This family has been living a lie for generations. Well, I'm done. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. I'm done sacrificing my happiness for the Hamilton name. And I'm done letting you make Maya feel like she's done something wrong when all she did was refuse to accept being betrayed." The silence that followed was absolute. I stood there beside Marcus, my heart pounding, watching this family implode around us. Part of me felt guilty for being the catalyst. But a larger part felt something else. Pride. Pride in Marcus for standing up to them. Pride in myself for not backing down. Mrs. Hamilton sank into a chair, her composure finally cracking. "This is a disaster," she said quietly. "No, Mom," Marcus said, his voice gentler now. "This is the truth, and maybe it's time this family tried living with truth instead of appearances." Trevor, who'd been silent through this exchange, suddenly laughed. A bitter, broken sound. "You know what the really pathetic part is? I don't even know if I actually loved her. Maya, I mean." He looked at me directly for the first time. "You were perfect on paper, successful, beautiful, gracious, everything I was supposed to want. But I don't think I ever really saw you. Not the way Marcus apparently does." The admission hung in the air between us. It should have hurt, but instead, it felt like the final piece of closure I didn't know I needed. "I know," I said simply. "I was performing too, Trevor. Trying to be the perfect girlfriend, then fiancé. Trying to fit into your world. But I lost myself in the process. So maybe we both needed this to fall apart." He nodded slowly. "Maybe we did. But did it have to be with my brother?" "That wasn't planned," I said honestly. "But I'm not sorry it happened. Marcus is—" I looked at the man beside me, feeling my heart swell with something I was finally ready to name. "He's real in ways you and I never were with each other. And I'm not giving that up to make anyone comfortable." "Then I think we're done here," Mr. Hamilton said stiffly. "Marcus, if you choose to pursue this relationship, you do so knowing it will have consequences. Social consequences, professional consequences, family consequences." "I'm aware," Marcus said, "and I'm choosing her anyway. But Dad, you should know. Threatening me won't work. Trying to damage Maya's business won't work. Because I'll make sure everyone knows why you're doing it. And I don't think the Hamilton name can survive that kind of publicity." It was a threat, plain and simple. And from the look on Mr. Hamilton's face, it landed. "Get out," Mr. Hamilton said quietly. "Both of you." We left hand in hand, walking through that grand house for the last time together. When we reached the car, I realized I was shaking. Marcus pulled me into his arms, holding me tight as the reality of what we'd just done settled over us. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I think so," I said, breathing in his scent, letting it ground me. "That was intense." "That was necessary," he corrected. "And Maya? You were incredible in there, strong and honest and completely yourself." We drove in silence for a while, processing everything. Then Marcus surprised me by pulling into a parking lot outside a small jazz club in Ukrainian Village, a neighborhood I knew well from my college days. "What are we doing here?" I asked. "You said you used to sing jazz standards, that you gave it up for Trevor. Well, it's open mic night, and I think it's time you took back that part of yourself." He grinned at me. "Unless you're too exhausted from emotionally demolishing my family." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. "You know what? Let's do it. Let's make beautiful noise just because we can." The club was small and intimate, filled with the kind of people who actually listened to music instead of treating it as background noise. We ordered drinks and settled in, and when the host called for open mic participants, Marcus gently pushed me toward the stage. My heart pounded as I walked up there, feeling exposed in a way I hadn't let myself feel in years. But then I sat at the piano, my fingers finding the keys like they'd been waiting for me, and I started to play. I sang "Feeling Good," Nina Simone's version, powerful and free. I sang it for myself, for the woman I'd been, and the woman I was becoming. I sang it for everyone who'd ever performed instead of lived, who'd ever made themselves smaller to fit someone else's expectations. And as I sang, I felt pieces of myself clicking back into place. When I finished, the club erupted in applause. But the only person I saw was Marcus, standing at the back, looking at me like I was the most amazing thing he'd ever witnessed. I made my way back to him through the crowd, and he pulled me into a kiss that tasted like whiskey and promise. "That was extraordinary," he said against my lips. "You're extraordinary." "I feel like myself again," I admitted. "For the first time in years, I actually feel like me." We stayed until closing, listening to music and talking about everything and nothing. About the future we might build, about the complications that still lay ahead, about what it meant to choose authenticity over comfort. It was nearly 2 a.m. when we finally left. Instead of taking me home, Marcus drove to the lakefront. We walked along the shore, the city lights reflecting off the water, the November wind sharp against our faces. "I have something to tell you," Marcus said, stopping to face me. "And I know the timing is terrible. I know we just agreed to take things slow. But after tonight, after watching you stand up to my family, and then watching you sing, I can't keep it to myself anymore." My heart raced. "What is it?" "I'm in love with you, Maya." His voice was steady, certain. "Not in love with the idea of you. Not in love with who you could be. In love with who you actually are. Messy and strong and creative and brave. I know it's fast. I know we have complications to work through. But I needed you to know. I'm in love with you. And I'm not going anywhere." Tears sprang to my eyes. But they weren't sad tears. They were tears of recognition, of coming home to something I hadn't known I was searching for. "I'm in love with you too," I said, the words coming easily because they were true. I fought it, told myself it was too soon, too complicated. But Marcus, being with you feels like the first honest thing I've done in years. Like I finally stopped performing and started living. He kissed me then, under the stars, with the lake stretching endless beside us and the city humming at our backs. It was the kind of kiss that marks a beginning, that acknowledges the past while reaching toward the future. "So what now?" I asked when we finally pulled apart. "Now we keep choosing each other," Marcus said simply. "Every day, with complications and all. We build something real instead of something perfect. We create a life that's ours, not anyone else's expectations of what it should be." "I like that plan," I said, leaning into him as we watched the water. "Though your family isn't going to make it easy. My family stopped mattering the moment they tried to make you apologize for being happy," Marcus said firmly. "They'll either come around or they won't. Either way, it's their choice, not ours." We stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other, watching the sky begin to lighten with the approaching dawn. Somewhere in the city, Trevor was probably with Vanessa, playing out the same patterns he'd played with me. Somewhere, Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton were probably arguing about appearances and damage control. But none of that touched us here, in this moment, building something entirely our own. 3 months later, I stood in front of a mirror in a completely different dress than the one hanging abandoned in my closet. This dress was deep burgundy, tea-length, with my natural curls crowned with small white flowers. No veil, no train, no performance. Jasmine stood beside me, tears in her eyes. "You look happy," she said simply. "Really, truly happy." "I am," I said, and meant it with my whole heart. We weren't in some grand ballroom or historic mansion. We were in the community center Marcus had designed in Bronzeville, surrounded by the people who actually mattered. My parents, my friends, the colleagues who'd supported me through everything. Marcus's family had been invited but hadn't come, which hurt him, but didn't surprise either of us. The ceremony was small, intimate, and completely us. No traditional marches, no formal vows written by someone else, just truth and promises, and the commitment to keep choosing each other. When my father walked me down the makeshift aisle, really just a path between folding chairs, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I'd found. Not just Marcus, but myself. The version of me that sang jazz standards, that spoke her mind, that chose authenticity over appearances every single time. Marcus stood at the front in a simple dark suit, his brother notably absent, his parents' chairs painfully empty. But he was smiling that smile that was only for me, his eyes bright with tears, and I knew we'd made the right choice. I was supposed to walk down a different aisle, I said, when it was my turn to speak, my voice carrying through the small space. To a different man, in a different life. And when that fell apart, I thought I'd lost everything. But I hadn't lost anything. I'd been set free to find this, to find you, to find myself. "You were always extraordinary," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "But watching you discover that for yourself, watching you take back all the parts of you that you'd hidden away, that's been the greatest privilege of my life. I promise to always see you, always celebrate you, always choose you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And that's infinitely better." We exchanged simple gold bands, kissed to enthusiastic applause, and walked back down that aisle hand in hand as husband and wife. Not Hamilton and Richardson joining dynasties, but Maya and Marcus, building something entirely their own. The reception was loud and joyful, filled with music and laughter and the kind of authentic celebration that comes from people genuinely happy for you. My parents danced together, my dad looking at me with such pride it made my chest ache. My mom cried happy tears and hugged Marcus tight, welcoming him to the family properly. When it was time for our first dance, Marcus pulled me close and whispered, "Any regrets?" I thought about the question seriously, looking around at this life we were building. Not a single one. You? Just that I didn't tell you how I felt 2 years ago. We could have had more time. We have all the time in the world now, I reminded him. Starting right here, right now. We danced, and I sang softly along to the music, feeling Marcus's arms around me, solid and real. This was nothing like the wedding I'd planned with Trevor. No ice sculptures or string quartets or 5-course meals designed to impress. Instead, we had soul food catered by a local restaurant, a DJ playing everything from Motown to current R&B, and a cake made by Marcus's favorite neighborhood bakery. Later, I found myself at the piano in the corner of the community center, the same upright Marcus had installed for music classes. Without planning it, I started playing, and before I knew it, half the reception had gathered around. I sang At Last by Etta James, looking at Marcus the entire time, meaning every word about finding love and loneliness being over. When I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. My mother was openly weeping. Even Jasmine, who prided herself on being tough, was wiping her eyes. "That's my wife," Marcus said proudly to anyone who would listen. "My incredibly talented, beautiful, authentic wife." The word sent a thrill through me. Wife. Not the performance version I would have been with Trevor, but the real thing. Partnership built on honesty and mutual respect, and actually seeing each other. As the evening wore on, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was from Mrs. Hamilton. "I saw the photos Diane Porter posted from your wedding. You looked radiant. Marcus looked happy. I was wrong to try to stop this. I'm sorry we couldn't be there, but I hope you'll both consider visiting for Christmas. No pressure, no judgment. Just family, if you're willing." I showed the message to Marcus. He read it twice, his expression unreadable. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think my mother is trying, in her own complicated way, to do the right thing. But Maya, this is your call too. If you're not ready to face them again, we don't go." I thought about it, watching our friends and family celebrate around us. Thought about the power of forgiveness, not for their sake, but for ours. About not letting old wounds keep us from building new bridges. "We'll think about it," I said finally. "See how we feel closer to the holidays. But Marcus, even if we never have a relationship with your family, even if it's just us against the world, I'm okay with that, because you're enough. This is enough." He kissed me then, soft and sweet, a promise of all the tomorrows we'd have to figure things out. The party went late into the night. Around midnight, Marcus and I slipped away to the rooftop of the community center, looking out over the neighborhood he'd helped rebuild, the city stretching endlessly around us. "I keep thinking about that moment I found Trevor's texts," I admitted. "How devastating it was. How I thought my world was ending. But if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be here," Marcus finished. "I know. Sometimes the worst moments lead us exactly where we need to be." "Do you think Trevor's happy?" I asked. "With Vanessa?" Marcus considered the question. "I think Trevor is exactly who he's always been. Whether that makes him happy or not, I don't know. But I hope he figures it out eventually. I hope he stops performing long enough to discover who he actually is." "That's generous of you." "Not generous. Just honest. And hopeful. Because if he can't be happy, if he can't figure out how to be authentic, then everything that happened, all the pain, would just be tragedy with no redemption." I leaned into him, breathing in the November night. "I'm glad I read those texts. Is that terrible to say?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "Because they set you free. They showed you a truth you needed to see. And they led you here, to this moment, to us. How could I be anything but grateful for that?" Below us, we could hear the party still going, music and laughter floating up through the night air. Our friends and family celebrating not just a wedding, but a beginning. The start of something built on truth instead of illusion. "I love you," I said, turning to face Marcus fully. "I love that you see me. I love that you challenge me. I love that you made me remember who I was before I started performing. I love that you're brave enough to stand against your family for what's right. I love everything about you, Marcus Hamilton. And I love everything about you, Maya Hamilton," he said. And my new last name sent another thrill through me. Not because I needed his name to define me, but because I'd chosen it freely, without pressure or performance. I love your strength and your vulnerability. I love your voice when you sing, and the way you throw yourself into your work. I love that you're not afraid to be messy and real. I love that you chose me, chose us, even when it would have been easier to walk away. We kissed under the stars, husband and wife, partners in every sense of the word. And as I stood there in Marcus's arms, I realized something profound. I had walked down an aisle with his brother, just not the brother I'd planned on. And that change, that unexpected twist of fate, had led me to exactly where I belonged. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jasmine. "Stop making out on the roof and get back down here. Your dad is about to make a toast, and trust me, you want to hear this." We laughed and headed back downstairs, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Ready to keep building this life we'd chosen, one honest moment at a time. My father stood in the center of the room, glass raised, his eyes finding mine across the crowd. "I've known my daughter her whole life," he began, his voice carrying through the suddenly quiet space. "I've watched her grow, achieve, become this incredible woman standing before us. And I'll be honest, when she first told me about Trevor, I had my doubts. Something felt off. But she seemed happy, so I kept my concerns to myself." He paused, taking a sip of his drink. "When that engagement ended, I was heartbroken for her. Not because of the lost wedding or the embarrassment, but because I hated seeing my daughter hurt. But you know what I've realized in these past few months? That heartbreak was the best thing that could have happened, because it led her to Marcus." Marcus squeezed my hand, both of us focused entirely on my father. "Marcus," my dad continued, looking directly at him now, "you love my daughter the way she deserves to be loved. You see her, really see her, and you celebrate everything that makes her who she is. You don't try to change her or diminish her or make her fit some predetermined mold. You just love her, authentically and completely. And for that, you have my deepest gratitude and respect." He turned back to the crowd. "So here's my toast, to Maya and Marcus, to second chances and unexpected blessings. To having the courage to walk away from what's wrong and toward what's right, no matter how complicated the path. To love that's real, instead of perfect. To my daughter, who's finally with someone worthy of her. May you build a life filled with truth, joy, and all the beautiful noise two authentic souls can make together." To Maya and Marcus, the room echoed, glasses raised. I was crying again, but they were happy tears. Tears of gratitude for this moment, this man, this life I'd almost missed by settling for less than I deserved. The party continued for hours more. We danced until our feet hurt, ate until we were full, laughed until our sides ached. At some point, Trevor's name came up. Someone asking about him with the kind of morbid curiosity people can't help. But instead of awkwardness or tension, I found myself able to talk about it honestly. "Trevor and I weren't right for each other," I said simply. "We were performing a relationship instead of living one. What he did was wrong, but in some weird way I'm grateful, because it freed us both to find what we actually needed." Later, as the party was winding down and guests were saying their goodbyes, Simone pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," my business partner said, hugging me tight. "Not just for finding happiness, but for refusing to let anyone make you feel guilty for it. You could have hidden this relationship, waited for some appropriate amount of time, but you didn't. You chose authenticity, and that takes real courage. I'm tired of living according to other people's timelines," I said. "Life's too short to wait for permission to be happy." "Amen to that," Simone agreed. "Now go enjoy your wedding night with that gorgeous husband of yours. The business will survive without you for 2 weeks." Marcus and I had planned a honeymoon in New Orleans, a city neither of us had visited, known for its music and food and unapologetic authenticity. It felt appropriate, celebrating our marriage in a place that valued being real over being proper. As we drove away from the community center, tin cans rattling behind us courtesy of Jasmine's handiwork, I looked back at the building one more time. The lights were still on, a few stragglers helping clean up, evidence of our celebration scattered throughout. "Any regrets now?" Marcus asked, echoing his earlier question. I thought about the past year, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the difficult conversations and family drama. I thought about the wedding that didn't happen and the life I didn't live. And then I thought about this new beginning, this authentic love, this partnership built on truth. Not a single one, I said firmly. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Good, Marcus said, bringing my hand to his lips. Because I plan on spending the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. That's a pretty long commitment, I teased. Forever sounds about right, he agreed. We drove through the Chicago night, heading toward our hotel, and then, in the morning, toward New Orleans, and whatever adventures awaited us there. Behind us was the wreckage of my old life, the performance I'd abandoned, the safety I'd rejected. Ahead was uncertainty, possibility, and the thrilling freedom of building something real. I'd walk down an aisle I never planned to walk, to a man I never expected to love, and somehow, in losing everything I thought I wanted, I'd found everything I actually needed. My phone buzzed one last time before I silenced it for the night. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the tone immediately. Trevor. I saw the photos. You look happy. Really happy. I'm sorry for everything, Maya. I hope he treats you better than I did. I hope you both find what I couldn't give you. I showed it to Marcus, who read it silently. Do you want to respond? He asked. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No. That chapter's closed. This is our beginning now, and I don't want to look back anymore. I deleted the message and tucked my phone away. The past had taught me valuable lessons, but I was done letting it dictate my future. Done letting Trevor's choices define my story. This was my life now, mine and Marcus's, and we were writing it together, one honest choice at a time. As we pulled up to our hotel, Marcus came around to open my door, ever the gentleman. But before I could step out, he stopped me. Maya Hamilton, he said, trying out my new name with a smile. My wife. That sounds perfect. It really does, I agreed, stepping into his arms. It really, really does. We walked into the hotel hand in hand, ready for our wedding night, our honeymoon, our future. Ready for all the messy, beautiful, complicated, real moments that lay ahead. Ready to keep choosing each other, keep choosing authenticity, keep choosing love that was earned and honest and worth every difficult step that led us here. I had read his texts before what should have been our wedding day. I had walked down an aisle with his brother instead. And in doing so, I'd found my way home to myself, to truth, to the kind of love that makes you more of who you are instead of less. It wasn't the story I'd planned to live. It was better, because it was real. And after years of performance, real was everything I'd been searching for without knowing it. As Marcus and I stepped into the elevator, rising toward our suite and our future, I caught our reflection in the mirrored walls. We were smiling, genuinely and completely. Two people who'd found each other through heartbreak and courage and the willingness to be vulnerable. Two people building something authentic in a world that often valued appearance over truth. I love you, I said, watching our reflections. I love you too, Marcus replied. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. The elevator doors opened onto our floor, and we walked toward our new beginning. Not perfect, not planned, not what anyone expected. But ours, completely, authentically, beautifully ours. And that was more than enough. That was everything.